the pivot from adversity to awesomeness?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd just like to introduce Chantal Fraser. She is one of my fellow Trenton District members, and she's also our past president, and she is formerly, she's a what's your lieutenant, something or other?
Lieutenant Colonel.
I think it's Colonel. She's retired from the military, and then she started her own business called Empowered Path, and she's been very busy doing a lot of great things, helping a lot of women and other people be the best they can be. So with no further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Chantal.
Thank you, Heather. I'm going to ask Heather to keep an eye on the question and answer window, just in case there's questions and answers as we go. There's going to be lots of times where we're going to engage in discussion, but if you could mute when I'm doing the presenting bit, then we won't have the background noise. And if there's questions that come up while I'm in presenting mode, Heather can interrupt me and say, Chantal, look at the questions. So we'll start with that. Okay, so first off, thank you for welcoming me here today. And I'd like to start by acknowledging that I'm giving this presentation to you from the traditional Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory, where there's many Indigenous people still living here from both Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, but also from Inuit and Métis families. There's still lots of Indigenous people here in Canada. So it's not just the traditional lands, it's the current lands of Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people. I am grateful to be able to live, learn, work, and play on these lands. A little bit about me. Heather mentioned that I was in the military. My husband joked that until I retired from the military, my entire life was the military, because I was born and raised from a couple who both met while they were serving in the military. At the time, my mom had to get out when she was 6 months pregnant with me because you weren't allowed to be a mother and serve in the military. I went to military college in 1984, spent a glorious time there, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, and ended up retiring after 28 years as a lieutenant colonel. So for perspective, for those who don't know what it means to be a lieutenant colonel, there's lieutenant colonel, colonel, and then there's general. So I was getting pretty high up there. In 2012, I did a major pivot. I decided that it was time for me to retire from the Canadian Armed Forces and to have more of an influence in the world as a one-woman business. So I decided I wanted to change the world from my dining room table. And I started my own company. So now what my company does, and it's pivoted several times since I started it, about a third of my business is doing online trainings with people like you and other groups. About a third of my business is coaching and mentoring, and about a third of my business is totally pro bono work where I help young women at risk figure out what they want to do for their careers, or I volunteer with our food bank as the treasurer, you know, things like that, where I'm doing stuff out of the goodness of my heart, but I consider it as part of my business, so that my work week is about 3 days paid work and about 2 days pro bono stuff for relaxing. So that's about how I do it. I have shared a PDF copy of the slides with Heather, and I've also shared all the links to some of the resources that I'll be showing you later. So you can download the PDF copy, I believe, right from here, or Heather will send it to you after. So you're welcome to take notes, but you don't have to take notes because you'll have everything. And just a moment, I have to click on the right spot. Okay, so I always like to start off with an agenda. And where you see underlined parts of the text, that means we should have finished about 30 minutes of the presentation each time we get to an underlined part of the text. So the first section of the presentation is going to be talking about how awesomeness follows adversity, about accepting the consequences of our choices, introducing the art of the pivot, and then I'm going to ask you to unmute and engage in chat if you want, or engage in, because we're a fairly small group with only about 14 of us in today, if you want to just participate verbally, as long as we take turns, that's cool. We'll participate in a pivot exercise. Then we're going to switch into the second part where we're going to talk about changing your obstacles into opportunities, asking for what you really want, and setting the conditions for success, followed by an interactive exercise about changing obstacles into opportunities. And the last third of the presentation is going to be about prioritizing in spring cleaning. And I don't mean literally spring cleaning your house because it just happens to be spring while I'm giving tonight's presentation, but spring cleaning your life. And then we're going to talk about some connections, resources, and I'm going to assign everybody homework. I'm not going to check to see if you did your homework, but I'm going to assign you homework. So the first thing when you're thinking about awesomeness following adversity, some things are out of our control, and we have to admit that some things are completely out of our control. A year ago, there's probably none of us who could have predicted that we'd be where we are today. Probably none of us thought there was going to be a pandemic hitting and that it was going to drastically change our lives, our daily lives, and change our normal to something uncertain. We don't know what our new normal is eventually going to be, but it's a pretty good bet it's going to be different from our normal a year ago. So this can be particularly challenging for those of us who have our own businesses, but it can also be challenging for those who are working for somebody else because your employer's business is changing, which radically affects your life. So no matter how small or big your business, no matter if you're an employee or if you're retired or and a professional volunteer now that you're retired, or if you're working for a multinational corporation or working for the corner store, your life has changed. Our schedules have changed. Many of us have lost income streams. Some fear that if they have a business, they're going to have to close that business. Some are concerned about whether they're going to be able to keep having a career doing the things that they love to do that they've been doing all along. So while this evening's session isn't going to focus on COVID-19, it is a part of our reality, so it'll be touched on briefly as we go through the presentation. And now what I want to do is I want to pivot this discussion to talking about a real life example of awesomeness following adversity. My first life-altering adversity was when I was in military college. I signed up for engineering because my dad was a mature student as an engineer, graduated from university and became an officer after he joined the military. So my parents always encouraged us to go to university and learn something and be useful and be financially independent. And my dad's solution to everybody achieving financial independence was that we should all be engineers. So he thought the best career anybody could ever do was be an engineer. And so I was strongly encouraged to take maths and sciences while I was in high school. And when I went to the recruiting center, I got picked up to take an engineering degree at military college. I arrived in military college and plugged away at my university studies for a couple of years. For those of us who are old enough to remember, back in the day in Ontario, there was something called grade 13. Grade 13 was also the first year cégep in Quebec, so I was doing effectively grade 13 or a preparatory year for university in Quebec in engineering. I passed that. I passed first year engineering. I got to second year engineering, and that's when I discovered that engineering and I did not get along. I really didn't enjoy it. My brain didn't work so that I could take a description of a word problem and translate it into the drawing that meant that I could do the math. I could do the math if somebody did the drawing for me, but I couldn't go from the words to the drawing to doing the math. So I flunked out of engineering. And when I flunked out of engineering, my captain called me to his office and he said, listen, you flunked out of engineering. He said, what do you want to do? At the time, my parents, my father was still in the military. My parents were serving in Warsaw, Poland. So it's not like I could just go home. Our home that we had in Ottawa was rented out to another military family, so there was no room for me to go live there. And I still wanted to be an officer in the military. So I asked my captain, what are my options? And he said, well, here's 3 course calendars for the 3 military colleges. He said, pick a military college, pick a career field, and pick an academic option. What do you want to study in university? And it's Friday afternoon, get back to me first thing Monday morning and let me know what you want to do with the rest of your life. So I went back to my room I gathered up a bunch of my buddies, male and female, and had a conversation with them and said, what am I going to do? Engineering and I just don't get along. I know I don't like it. I was failing out of engineering, and I had a higher grade point average than most of my buddies who ended up going to graduate as engineers, because I did well in the softer courses, like the soft skills, English and French and psychology and things like that. So the one good thing I got out of the guy I was dating at the time was he said, there's this thing called personnel administration. I said, what do they do? He said, they take care of people, Chantal. I said, taking care of people, that's what I like to do. So I went to see my captain on the Monday, and I said to him, I want to stay in the Air Force, because I was in the Air Force at the time. I want to be a personnel administration officer, and I want to take business administration right here at the university where I'm already going. So he said, okay, cool. That's what we're going to do. But you know, there was a chance where I could have ended up having to move to Poland to live with my parents, or having to find somewhere else to live, and I chose to pick another path. I thought, you know, if engineering is not going to work out for me, I'm going to try something else. And it turned out that business administration was the best decision I ever made, and I ended up thriving in that program, and everything went well after that. So sometimes when that adversity happens, it's just getting you ready to have some awesomeness. Now, there's a thing about choices that we have to remember. Every time adversity comes our way, we have a choice, even if some of those choices are unpalatable. We have to recognize that some things are completely out of our control. Yesterday, it was raining like crazy here. It was raining so hard that it was knocking down the plants in our garden. I had a choice yesterday. I could go out and walk in the rain, and I could put on a rain jacket or grab an umbrella because I didn't want to be too hot, or I could go out without any protection and get rained on and get wet. That's a choice. If I'd wanted to go out and take a walk around the block and it was pouring rain, I could decide I'm not going out because it's pouring rain and it's too hot to wear a raincoat. I'll stay inside, and then I have to accept the consequence that I chose to stay inside and not get wet, and then missed out on the exercise. So there's always a choice to be made, and then you have to accept the consequences of that choice. We can't change what happened in our past. I couldn't change that I actually failed out of engineering. I couldn't change that, but I could make choices about what I wanted to do, and I did. Some of the things that are happening in our present time are beyond our control, and we can't change them. We can't change that a pandemic has affected our lives, but we can make choices about how we're going to make changes in our life and pivot in our life to deal with those changes. Figuring out what you're going to do next, and figuring out that you can accept the consequences of those choices, is a big part of getting ready to pivot. And when you make those choices about how you're going to pivot, you can spend some time thinking about what things you're going to do and what things you're going to get somebody else to do. You can do that for your business. You can do that for your career. When I give this presentation live, I look at everybody in the eye and I say, please don't make decisions about your personal life based on this. Please don't decide that you're going to turf a spouse just because of the power of one presentation, because there have been people who get really emotional after this talk. Please apply this to your professional and business lives, and not your personal lives. That's something for somebody who's got a lot more background than I do to help you deal with if you've got something going on in your personal life. So the art of the pivot. Basically, when you're doing a pivot is when you're making a change and you're changing how you're going to do things. So it's always valuable to get advice from others when you're going to make a change. Always great to seek advice. But remember that when you're seeking advice from others, some people, in all honesty and in all genuine love and caring for you, will say, don't quit your job. I know you hate it. I know you're miserable every day when you get home, but don't quit your job and start a business, because so many businesses fail when you start a business. It's okay that they're saying that from a place of love, but it doesn't mean that you have to follow their advice. You can ask them for advice, but you have to do with what makes sense to you. So if you're doing something and you're working for somebody and you're miserable all the time, or you can see that there's going to be a change of bosses and you know you're going to be miserable, or you can say, it doesn't even have to be because you're miserable. You could love what you're doing right now, but look forward and say, wow, I really wish I could start a business making handmade customized masks for everybody I know and selling them for $25 a piece because they're so glorious and so comfortable to wear. If there's something that you're really driven about, it's your thoughts that matter when you're deciding what you're going to do next. And it's really important while you're thinking about that pivot to think about what you're really good at and what you love doing. Because when you make a decision to make a major pivot in your career or in your business, if you're pivoting to do something you don't like, you're not going to enjoy it, and chances are you're going to fail because you're just not enjoying it, so you're not going to put your heart and soul into it, and you're not going to do your best job. So really think about what you're good at. When I started my business, I knew that I liked speaking. That's why we're here today. I knew that I could write if I had to, and I knew that I could write human resources policies if I had to, and I didn't really want to. So I had to think of that, and when the first few clients that came my way and said, oh, could you write some HR policy for us? I had to think, no. And I told them to go see other people who liked doing that sort of thing, because I know I don't like writing policy. So think about what you love doing, what you enjoy doing, what you're good at, and then you have to figure out how to get people to pay you to do it, but that's another story. And while you're doing this, it's really important to update your social media profiles. Update anywhere where your name is listed, where your name and business, your name and career is listed. So if you're on LinkedIn, update your LinkedIn profile. Even if you're not sure what you're going to do next, signal that you're thinking of changing. You can change the title under your name in LinkedIn to seeking new opportunities, or starting a business, or reimagining my future. You can put anything that you want there to help bring about that opportunity so that people know that you're thinking of changing. Change your Facebook, change your Twitter, your Instagram, all those social media profiles, change them to reflect the path you want to pivot onto. The timing, though, is key. If you want to start a new business and you think, wow, a year from now, I could be doing professional coaching and teaching people how to make beautiful fitted face masks to keep them safe from pandemics, and I could do that a year from now, I know I'll be ready. Don't start changing your social media profiles now. Change it closer to when you're ready to launch. You can let your close circle know that you're thinking about it, but if you change your profile now and say, coaching people to make amazing hand-fitted masks that'll make you look beautiful and keep you safe, but then you don't do anything with it for 6 months or a year, then people get fed up of waiting. So it's really important to watch that timing of when you let the rest of the world know that you're going to pivot. And then there's the last piece of advice that we've heard from a sports company: just do it. When it comes time, just do it. Worst case scenario, it's not going to work out. Best case scenario, you're going to achieve all your wildest dreams. You're going to be having the best career you wanted, or the amazing business you always dreamed of. So just do it. And all the advice that's on this slide here came from a really great book called Pick 3. You can have it all, just not every day, by Randy Zuckerberg. She calls herself the other Zuckerberg because, yes, she's the sister of that famous dude who started that social media company. She was there right at the beginning helping him out, and she wrote this amazing book. I recommend it. It's in the recommended reading list later. Something to think about. Now, the next thing we're going to do, and we've been doing, we're just on time. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to open up the mic for the pivot exercise. So if you want, you can put a comment in the chat if you want me to call your name out that way. or if you're really excited and you want to just shout out and share your idea, that's cool. But what I want you to do next, I want you to take at least a minute, and I know the silence is going to be really tough for some people, Heather, but I want you to, it's a friendly bubble.
Smart Alex.
Yeah. Okay. Please take a minute to think about some adversity that you faced and how you pivoted. You could write it down on a piece of paper. You could jot it in the chat. You could, however you can remember it, so that if you want to share it, you can share it. That's great. And then I'm going to call for volunteers. So you can either, like I said, you can shout out. We're a small group, so you can unmute yourself and shout out and say that you want to share your adversity, and then share how you're pivoted. So it's written on the screen, volunteering using chat function. That's because the last time I gave it, there was about 50 women on the group. So I wanted to do it that way. But if you want to shout out, and you've got probably another 30 seconds before you have to do that.
Charmaine had her hand up, so she might be almost ready to go. I don't know.
Okay, great. So who had her hand up, sorry?
Charmaine?
Charmaine, yeah, I can't see that, so thank you, Heather. Charmaine, tell us about your time of adversity.
Okay, I've had several in my life. I call it taking your next step. So the one was, I was working in a job in construction. I was a dispatcher for a construction company. And there'd been a couple things happen, but when my brother-in-law dropped dead suddenly at the age of 31, and I took time off, of course, for the funeral. Then I called in. I had another day to take off for my sister
Is the
to be
dog
there.
yours, Charmaine?
And when I went back to work, I was in big trouble because somebody was making up stories about me. And this was the second time she'd done it. So I thought, time to move on. So I had to leave that job. And shortly thereafter, I got another job in another industry, and I just kept carrying on. But yeah, and good things have always followed me. So whenever I've left adversity. So that led into leaving the next job after 3 years because I'd learned all I could. And then I went to college in my 40s and got my operations management diploma and started a new business with my father.
That's fantastic that you went from one industry to another and went back to school when you were mature and you had a better idea of what you might want to do next, and that you started a family business with your father. That's pretty cool. I couldn't start a business with my husband or my father. I admire you for working with family.
Well, that was a challenge, but it was a great learning experience because it led me into my speaking career and coaching. So I kept going, keep going.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Charmaine.
You're welcome.
Heather, I can't see if anybody else has got their hand up or if they've said something in chat. The chat just has your comments about.
Yeah, no, there's nobody who wants. Who do we want to pick?
Oh, come on. Somebody wants to share. I'll tell you an adversity story while you're thinking of one to share, because it doesn't have to be that life-changing. It could be a little thing. The last time I gave this talk was on April 8th. And 4 days before I was scheduled to give the talk to that audience of 60 women, 50 or 60 women, we had an internet issue in our home, and our Cogeco failed, and we were basically 3 days without internet. And so I was like, okay, what do I do? All right, what are my options? My options are that if I'm sitting in the dining room, I can access my neighbor's internet, and she's allowed me to use it before in the case of an emergency. So that's one option, but that's sort of awkward. So I'm not sure I want to do that. And what if she's out of internet too, because we're next door neighbors and we have the same provider? So, and it's COVID, right? It was April 8th. It's COVID. There's all sorts of things going on. It's not like I could go hang out in the library or borrow a room at the Chamber of Commerce. But what our library did was they expanded the internet reach so that the Wi-Fi reached right out across the parking lot. So I went and parked in the library a couple of days before I was due to give this presentation. And I sat in the back of my van with my laptop, and I Skyped my parents to see if the connectivity worked well enough for video. And my parents coached me on, okay, there's light coming in on that windows. You have to cover that window if you're actually doing it in your van. And we can see stuff out of the back, so you should hang something off the back of your van too, so that maybe a white sheet or something, so it's not so distracting. And so my parents coached me through it. The day before I was due to give the presentation, and I'm still thinking, oh, what am I going to do? And I love my husband, but he was like, just give it up, just reschedule. It's not going to happen. The day before I was scheduled to do the presentation, an hour and a half before we were doing the dry run, the Cogeco techs showed up and stood in our yard because they couldn't come into the house because of COVID, and talked with my husband and had him running around inside the house with cables and things like that. And within an hour, they had me hooked up just in time for my dry run that afternoon. And the next day I was able to deliver the presentation through internet at our home. So sometimes the adversity is something small, and that's okay. It's how do you figure out how you're going to pivot and do something differently.
Awesome. So we have Elaine now. She's got her hand up. Is that okay?
Excellent. Go ahead, Elaine.
Hi. It was funny because before tonight's meeting, I was actually thinking about this a bit. 20 years ago, I had worked for a major bank for 20 years. I pretty much started out of high school. And 20 years ago, they did some restructuring and eliminated my job. And they wanted to keep me, but weren't offering me great opportunities. And at that point, I was just kind of bored and done, and was looking at other opportunities. And I called, anyway, I ended up running into a situation where I spoke to a manager from an insurance company, and he said to me, so are you, how long have you been with the bank? And, do you like your job? And I said, well, my job's been eliminated. And he said, oh, well, why don't you come see me, and I'll, we can talk about some opportunities. Anyway, long story short, I ended up making the decision to go self-employed as an insurance advisor. And I was just thinking tonight, best decision I ever made in my entire life.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. It's really wonderful when you realize you're not happy, or you might soon be unhappy, and you're open to those opportunities and you jumped at it. That's a fantastic pivot. And now I see Heather is telling me Janet is next.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. I 7 years ago, well, many years ago, I got asked to go into business. So I'm a CPA, an accountant, a professional accountant. Many years ago, actually, a friend of a friend, when she graduated, she asked me to go into business for herself, but for a variety of reasons, mostly cash flow, it didn't work for me, but it was always in the back of my mind. And so about 7 years ago, I got laid off from CBC, and I thought, okay, if not now, when? And still there was this little fear in my mind. Okay, if I go into business for myself, what does that mean? Who, how am I going to work? Who, whatever. And here in Ottawa, there's a place called Invest Ottawa, and they do many things, but one of them is helping small business owners on a variety of things: marketing, internet, accounting, which I didn't need, but and so I attended a variety of workshops, and I can't say really took away a lot of things, but what I did take away was all the incredible businesses that people were starting. Are they successful? Are they still alive 7 years later? I don't know. Haven't kept in touch with anyone, but the purpose is that all those people had that energy, and that assisted me to pivot to what I wanted to do. And I have to say, I'm pivoting continually. Probably most business owners are. What I started out doing in the beginning is not what I'm doing now. And what I'm doing now, I don't think I could have done at the beginning of my business. I had the skill set, but not the confidence. But in a sense, I'm pivoting all the time. And in COVID, it just adds an extra dimension. Training and coaching people when you're not with them all the time, because a lot of coaching happens in the hallways and when you're going to get a cup of tea and so forth. So we have to look at different ways to pivot to provide that spontaneity. It's exciting. It's exciting. It wasn't adversity so much, but it was exciting.
And I agree 100% with you. When you have your own business, you're always pivoting. When I started my business, I thought I'd be doing speaking, but I didn't want to travel. And I thought I'd have to write something, but not HR policy. And maybe I'd do some training. And it's really changed since then because people keep insisting on paying me for things. So I figure if they want to pay me for it and I like doing it, then it becomes a service. So yeah, I love that you're coaching, that you've taken that expertise and you're not just helping people by providing them a service, you're actually coaching them so that they can take care of their business better.
Yeah. And if you have any clients that want HR policy, now I don't sell myself as an HR advisor, but I do write a lot of policy. So
I'm writing that down. I've been jotting notes all along, but I'm circling HR policy because I still don't like it, and I still have people ask me to do it. Thank you.
I mean, I mostly write finance related policy and review and all that kind of stuff, but happy to chat.
HR and finance are pretty darn close. There's two sides of the same coin. Okay, so we're right at about the time that I wanted to move on to the next section. So this is perfect. Thank you to Janet, Elaine, and Charmaine for sharing. It takes a lot of courage, even when you know the crowd is friendly, to share that sort of information. So I really appreciate you doing that. And now I have to click here again. There we go. So the next section is called Obstacles Are Opportunities. When I retired from the military, I knew I wanted to do what I love best. And what I love best is speaking in front of people and doing training. But like I just said, I didn't want to travel because at the time my eldest was just starting grade 7 and my youngest was just starting grade 1, and there was no way that I wanted to be traveling and missing out on that part of their lives. Now they're all teenagers and I'm still not that excited about traveling, but because when teenagers want to speak, I kind of like to be around. So the challenge I faced when I started my business in the late 2012 was, how do you create a successful speaking career while not traveling? And this is going to sound odd now in 2020, but back in 2012, I thought, okay, I know there is this thing called the internet. I know it's out there and I used it while I was in the military, but sparingly because we mostly used internal networks within computing services. We didn't spend a lot of time just cruising the internet. So I ended up getting my first paid opportunity from somebody I didn't know from a LinkedIn discussion that my very supportive husband shared with me. He said, Chantal, I think you'd like this discussion. And it was a discussion about, can Indigenous women play a critical role or a pivotal role in the mining industry? And I waded right in there and I said, of course we can. We can do anything. And the gentleman who was running the discussion and I got into a bit of a discussion about it, a very positive discussion. And so he said, okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. He said, I'd like to meet you for coffee. And this was it was late spring, early summer 2013. And I thought, I said, well, aren't you in Ottawa? And he said, yes. So let's get together for coffee. I said, I'm in Quinte West. I'm 3 hours away. And this is my very first summer off with my children. So I don't want to come to Ottawa for coffee. And he said, okay. So in September, when your kids are back in school, reach out and talk to me and we'll have a Skype conversation and we'll figure out how you can help me help Indigenous women succeed. And so for the next several years, I did projects for a social enterprise out of Ottawa. I think I was working with them for 2 years before I physically met anybody from the team in Ottawa. And that gave me the opportunity to start doing business online. And through this social enterprise, I met my first recurring client, besides them, a company now called Indigenous Link. And I'm their outsourced trainer. So I've been providing training for Indigenous Link to their clients like CBC Radio-Canada, to big banks, to colleges and universities, and the biggest trucking company in Canada. I do training for them from my home, from my laptop. So it's fantastic. They paid me to develop the training. They pay me every time I deliver it, and I don't have to leave home. So I got to be a speaker online. And that meant when COVID happened, I was ready to do this sort of thing. I thought, because all my children are teens now, that I would actually start traveling a little more often come this summer. There was an opportunity that was coming up where I was going to be able to be a speaker for my other professional association starting this month. So I thought I'm going to prepare, polish up a bunch of my talks. I'm going to get ready and I'm going to offer them to my other professional association. And because I wouldn't be on the board there anymore, it wouldn't be a conflict of interest for them to pay me to speak. So I was going to do that, and I was going to start traveling. And I started picking up some more speaking opportunities locally in March and April. Then COVID happened and everything got canceled. And then I found out there was a really big demand for online training. So what happened was all these talks that I thought that I would be delivering in person and traveling from place to place, now I'm polishing them up and delivering them this way. And in early April, I was contacted by the president of a small Canadian company, Sean Mintz from Mentor City, and he said, Chantal, he said, you've been one of our biggest supporters through my other professional association. He says, you've been one of our biggest supporters. He said, and I remember from talking to you before that you actually provide training in French. And I said, yes, I do. And he said, great. I have clients, government clients, who want mentoring training in French. And I figure if I hire you, you can do my French and English training. So now I've got a 2-year contract with Mentor City to deliver their training. I've done some already, and I've got 3 sessions next week with them as well. So all this to say, I want to be a speaker, don't want to travel. So that obstacle of not wanting to travel ended up being an opportunity, which helped me pivot when COVID-19 hit, and I could start taking on more opportunities like tonight, where we're doing this online session. Now, this is a really key thing to remember. When you're trying to share what you want, when you're trying to let people know what you'd like to create, Elaine shared earlier that she wasn't ready to, or sorry, Janet shared earlier that she wasn't ready to start her own business right away. So she waited, and then when she was ready, she launched and got to meet all kinds of people and got motivated and decided to start her own company. When you ask for what you want, you're more likely to get what you want as an outcome. Because quite frankly, the people in your life, no matter how well they know you, if they're your employer, if they're your business colleagues, if they're your professional association colleagues, if they're your family, no matter how loving somebody is towards you, they can't read your mind. So you have to ask for what you want. And this is a lesson that was shared with my sister and I from the time we could understand conversation. And the family legend, which is a reality, so it's a legend, not a myth, is that when my mother was 18 and had graduated from high school, against the advice of her parents who wanted her to start working when she was 16, she fought and finished high school. When she did that, she thought that her future was going to be working in a shoe factory like her older brothers and her parents, or well, her mother. She thought she'd end up working in a shoe factory, and that was her life. That was her future. One of her girlfriends said, hey, I hear that the military is hiring women. I want to go see the recruiting office. I want to go figure out what it's like if we join the military. And I don't want to go alone. I'm afraid to go alone. Will you come with me? So my mother said, I have no interest in joining the military, but I'll go with you because I'm a good friend and I'll support you. So she went, and when she arrived and she explained that she wasn't there to be recruited, she was just there to support her friend, the recruiter said to my mom, well, you're going to be with her all day. You might as well go through the process and just see what it's like and learn about what the military is. So my mom thought, yeah, okay, cool, I'll do this. So she did everything. She did all the interviews, the medical, the dental, everything. At the end of the day, they came back to the recruiting center with all their reports from doctors and dentists and said, here you go, here's all our paperwork. And the recruiters turned to my mom and her friend and said, okay, here's some money, sign here. And my mom was a little suspicious. She said, why are you giving us money? We haven't done anything yet. And the recruiter said, you have applied. You spent all day. You would have had, running around Montreal, visiting different places, getting all this done. You would have had to eat lunch. You would have had to take the bus to get to where you're going. So here's some money to compensate you for what you spent. And my mother didn't say it out loud, but she thought to herself, my family's dirt poor because I walked everywhere and I went without lunch because I don't have any money. And she thought, these people are willing to pay me just to try to be in the military. So when she got an offer to join as a finance clerk, she did. She thought, you know what? I'm going to try it out because they told me I could see the world. So she did her basic training in Quebec, and then she went to her first posting, and her first posting was to Foymount, Ontario. Foymount was a radio station near Calabogie, Ontario, that is much smaller than Calabogie, Ontario. It's basically in the back beyond, and there wasn't a lot there. My mother was unilingual French when she joined the military. Foymount, Ontario was a very English community, and it wasn't seeing the world. So my mom said to her sergeant, she said, I want to see the world. I want to go to Europe. And they said to her, you're never going to Europe, Chevrier. You're never going there. You just joined. You've barely been in 6 months. You're not going anywhere. You're going to have to do your 3 years here like everybody else. And my mom said, no, the recruiter said I could see the world. I want to see the world. So they said, write a memo. So she did. She wrote a memorandum asking to go to Europe. And by the end of the year, she was posted to Germany, where she met my father. And they got married, and my sister and I happened. So, ask for what you want. Best case scenario, you get it. Worst case scenario, somebody says no, and then you figure out something else that you might want. The more specific you can be about asking for what you want, the more likely you are to get what you want. And if they keep saying no, but they offer you something else, check it out, because maybe that's better than what you thought you wanted. And this works whether you own your own business and you're trying to figure out what that next business offering might be, that next business service that you offer, or it could happen if you're working for somebody else. When you're an employee, if you're flexible and you prove your worth to your employers and you ask for what you want, you're much more likely to get it than if you just happily go along and figure, if I serve my time, eventually I'll get what I want. No, ask for it. Tell people what you want. Tell people that you want to do that amazing opportunity, that amazing course, or that lateral transfer. If you don't ask, you can't blame anybody but yourself if you don't get it. And a part of that asking for what you want and recognizing when obstacles can be turned into opportunities is setting the conditions for your success. So you can't expect everything just to get handed to you because you happen to have been around for a long time or because you're an amazing employee. It's important to make decisions and make choices that help you get what you want. So the first one, and the one that a lot of women in particular forget, is that you have to take care of yourself. And that means take care of your health. That means take care of your mental and physical health. For example, I've got a really busy week coming up next week with 3 presentations. That'll be the first time I give each of them to a fairly nitpicky audience. And it's going to be a busy week, and I'm helping to launch some other things next week. I know it's going to be a busy week next week. So I have purposely set aside time next week so that I can do stuff just to clear my head between presentations and between milestones, because I know I need that in order to be on my game when it comes time for me to do my presentations. For some people, this is eating properly. Sometimes it's having those treats just to give yourself a pickup. It's getting enough sleep. It's taking care of yourself physically. Just take care of yourself. You know what you need to do to take care of yourself. Make it a priority in your life, because that helps you reach the success, reach the goals you want. It's also really important to be open to new ideas, experiences, and people. Most people have a tendency to want to hang out with and work with people that are like them. If we keep always doing stuff with the same people, then we keep always having the same sorts of conditions. When Janet, I keep calling you Elaine. When Janet just made that decision that she wanted to change and she wanted to start her own business, she surrounded herself with other people who were starting their own businesses. And that energy is contagious. And that energy probably sparked new ideas about how she could serve people starting their businesses and serve people who own their own businesses so that she could grow her business. So it's really important to be open to meeting new people and getting new ideas. It's also really important to keep learning. It's important to learn new skills that can help you, or to hone the skills you already have and the things that you're great at doing by learning new ways of doing that. So it's important to always keep that learning going on. Connecting with people in your field is also really important. When you do that, and I do it through BPW, and I do it through the Human Resources Professional Association, and a bunch of other groups that I hang out with and meet people in. So I learn from people that are doing the same sorts of things that I do, and I learn from people that are completely different from me doing similar things to what I do, or who do things that interest me and that I might want to do someday. Professional associations are a great way to get to meet some of those people in your field. You're all members of BPW, thank you. But you each probably have a professional association or some sort of group that supports people who are in whatever business you're in or in whatever career field you're in. It's really worthwhile getting to know about those people. Another thing that's important is being strategic when volunteering. While I was in the military, I always volunteered for things that I liked to do, but I also volunteered for things that I liked to do that had impact in my life. So I volunteered to help be to be a member of the board for my children's first daycare. And when we moved to the Trenton area, Quinte West area, I volunteered to be on the board where my children next went to daycare. And so I like volunteering. I like being one of the people in charge, making decisions, thinking strategically. But also for me at the time, it was a way to be involved in the decisions about how my children were cared for and raised while I was busy working. Yeah, right. As I got ready to do something else, and I joined the Human Resources Professional Association, I volunteered on that board because I thought, if I'm going to start my own business, it's probably going to be in HR. And if I don't start my own business, it's probably going to be doing HR for somebody else. So I need to know some people in HR, and how can I do that? By volunteering with that other professional association. So it's really important. You can volunteer for things that you know you want to do. If you're thinking of changing careers, you can volunteer to do a role that you might like to do as a new career, as a new job opportunity. Say you weren't doing anything with money, then being treasurer for your grandchild's daycare or being treasurer for BPW might set you up so that you could be doing some financial planning with small businesses. Who knows, right? Volunteer for those things that help you get those skill sets that you want. Now, a reminder about all this stuff of setting the conditions for success, and it goes back to what Randy said earlier, Randy Zuckerberg, about you can have it all, just not all at once. If you're going to be really driving to be at the top of your career field, the top of your profession, or if you're really driving for a growth business that just keeps expanding or franchising, or you have a bunch of employees, you've got to expect to work more than 40 hours a week, okay? Like, sanity check here. If you're going to be doing that much, then you're going to be putting in the hours. So it's just something to think about. Okay, now we're again at an opportunity for an exercise and for people to share ideas. So I want people to take about a minute, and it'll take me about 30 seconds to talk about this. I want you to take a minute to think about an obstacle that you faced, or better yet, an obstacle that you're currently facing in your business or in your career. And I want you to think about what you're willing to share here in this webinar tonight. So we're going to call for volunteers again. and we're going to ask people, the volunteers, to briefly share their obstacle. Now, we don't want a 20-page manifesto on your obstacle. In about a minute or two, describe your obstacle. And then I'm going to call on everybody else in the audience to share ideas to help reframe that obstacle into an opportunity. So we've got about another 30 seconds. Take a sip of your cup of coffee, jot some notes down, pop your name into the chat function, and then Heather will make sure that we see who's willing to share their obstacle first.
Come on, girls. We're all family. Who's willing?
Just while you're thinking about what obstacle you're willing to share on
Mighty's willing when you're done.
Mighty's willing? Perfect. Then we'll just jump right in with Mighty. Mighty, tell us your obstacle, please. But you have to take
My
yourself off
obstacle,
mute.
first of all, is making sure I'm unmuted. Just a very practical obstacle right now as business and professional women is the obstacle of how do you continue your work in the time of physical distancing. I do strategic planning, evaluation, program planning, feasibility studies, business planning, all of which requires that you gather a lot of information, which can be done online, and you confer with clients and client stakeholders. So I'm used, I've been in this field for a long time, and I'm used to a combination of face-to-face and teleconferences. Critical part of face-to-face is, of course, with the client and the client's board, so that whatever ideas are coming up with the stakeholders, we can sort of see their body language, truly hear and listen to what they're saying. So it's a new world to try to capture this from Skype, if you will, from the webcam. I do notice now my world has been pretty quiet. My projects that I was on, I am on 3 projects, halted to a grinding halt because we're in the human service industry and everybody's busy saving their clients from COVID. But we notice slowly RFPs are appearing for strategic planning and big planning from cities, for example. Yesterday, something came out on the future of residential care. So now the business challenge is the challenge of obstacle of conferring and collaborating without the human touch. So that's the obstacle we're facing. So me, you know how I feel about technology. Moi, I have had to, and Chantal is my witness, attend Zoom courses and attend BPW International Zoom think tanks. So, not only now do I have to make sure I can work with technology, that I'm lit from the front, have a smile on my face, I'm staring into the camera rather than elsewhere, and I'm trying to exude my charm over the electronic waves. So that's the obstacle. But honestly, in the last month, I also see the opportunity, which is the opportunity of really expanding your horizons. Because in the past, when we did sort of best practice reviews, we would call somebody in Australia or Outer Mongolia and talk on the phone. And now I see, well, why don't we do a video call? See the person as we talk about what are the best practices in Outer Mongolian mental health care. So it's really, so to me, it's an obstacle that, I suppose because now we're going to 10 people physically distanced in the same room, there will be opportunity to reconvene with the boards. And there will be an opportunity now to expand the kind of consultation that we do. So that's my obstacle, and these are the opportunities I'm sort of seeing behind it, and I'm always open to advice for my sisters. Thank you, Chantal.
You're welcome, Mighty. Thank you for sharing. It takes a lot of courage to share what your obstacles are, so I really appreciate you doing that and being very frank and honest with us. Is there anybody who would like to volunteer about something that Mighty might consider doing to help her make this obstacle into even more of an opportunity? Heather, are you watching for volunteers?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, while you're thinking about that, one of the things that I've realized when we're going through this is that it's really important when we're doing something like we did tonight, where we took a few moments at the beginning just to hear who everybody was and where they were from, and some people shared a little bit more. One of the things when you're building that rapport over the internet is to schedule some time for that chit chat that would naturally happen when you're meeting people face to face. Because when you're going into a boardroom face to face, normally as the consultant, you'd be one of the first people there, and you'd be greeting people and meeting people as they come in and getting to know them, making them a little more comfortable with discussing things with you. So taking a few minutes to do that at the beginning of your consultations online is one way to, it's not as effective as if you're face to face, and yes, you'll be able to be face to face soon, but it helps to build that camaraderie and that rapport.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to share some ideas?
Quiet tonight. What's going on?
It's Charmaine here. Hi. I just want to say that for my day, I really enjoy being on Zoom because there's so many advantages. I don't have to drive and I'm still connecting with people and doing a book study and doing other things and starting an online program. You can see the people when you're on Zoom, so you get an idea. You can read some of the body language, and even if, like, sometimes we have to find a way to love what we're doing because we're doing it. And that's just a thought.
Yes, thank you.
That's a great point. And when all of this first started out, I had a cold, which I still don't know if it was COVID or just a cold. But because I was coughing and hacking and sick, my husband was responsible for groceries for about 5 weeks, just because I thought, I don't know how long. If this was something that was serious, I don't want to give it to anybody else. My husband and I were sleeping in different rooms so that I wasn't contaminating his air. And he was doing groceries for our family. We spent a lot less on groceries when my husband was doing groceries than when I do it, because he didn't do the impulse buys. He'd just buy what was on the list. So sometimes there's simple things that can help us find opportunities in those obstacles.
I can just add that I don't have actually an obstacle to opportunity, but I have noticed when we first started, i.e. March 16th, working remotely, and most people, if people had used Zoom before, it was very erratic, and now all of a sudden everyone was forced to use it. It was very stiff and stilted. And now I find that people are taking a little bit of time at the beginning, or they're using the personal chat where you can send someone a message. It's similar to, you'd sort of pass notes in school, or you'd sort of say something to someone beside you in a meeting. So people are loosening up, if you will, a little bit, while still being professional, obviously. But, and I'm finding that people are getting familiar with, as I said, staring into a sort of a blank screen kind of thing, and getting their backgrounds, for the most part, sort of appropriate. Lighting and, not having a messy bed in the background, or some people put, like the beach on the background, or some kind of scenery or something. So I find people are getting more familiar and more as said, at ease with it, as well as just the tools, sharing the screen and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed the same thing. And it's been particularly obvious on the BPW leadership webcasts or whatever. I know I'm not supposed to call it BPW International, but they're international calls brainstorming what we're going to do with BPW moving forward. And there's leadership sessions, and there's young professionals giving digital sessions. And it's really cool because I'm finding I'm starting to get to know these women that live in Hong Kong and Turkey and Istanbul and Australia and New Zealand. I'm getting to know these women that I haven't met before in BPW because of the Zoom sessions that are happening fairly regularly. So I think it's a different way of building rapport, but I think it still is possible.
Keely, did you want to say something?
I was just going to say something very similar to that. My team and I, I'm of course working in Ottawa for the federal government in national accommodation. So we have a team here in Ottawa, but we also work with people in the regional offices about their accommodations and so on. And up to now, they've always been just this name that I would call. There might be a voice, or there might be a name on an email. And that wasn't really very good for relationships. And I found that in the last couple of months since we've done COVID, the government has had everybody using, or at least Justice has had us using Microsoft Teams with the video chat option available. And I've started reaching out to the people in the regions via video call as opposed to audio call. And it really has made, I don't know, somehow it's cemented it in each other's psyches who these people are that we're dealing with. And I see that has been an opportunity to strengthen relationships and develop working relationships, as opposed to pre-COVID, when, you know, they just weren't as much a real person.
That's a great point, Kaylee, and it's one of the things that I knew during my military career when I'd work somewhere and I'd work in one building and I'd have staff in different buildings. Being able to physically go and meet the people in the other buildings made it a lot easier for them to understand who I was, and made it a lot easier for me to understand what they needed. And now that we're all using video chats, we're getting sort of a taste of that, because we might not have the time during our old normal to travel to all those regions, but we can make the time when we don't have to add the travel to have those conversations and build that rapport. And I think that's going to be part of our new normal, is that there'll be less travel just because, and there'll be a little bit more of the video communication and the teamwork using MS Teams and so many other wonderful tools. So thank you. Unless there's somebody else who'd like to add something else, we'll move on to the next section.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is prioritizing and spring cleaning. Okay, so I'm going to tell you something, and I know as BPW members, you're going to find this difficult to believe, but it's true. You can't do everything. I know this is a shock. None of us can do everything. We're not superheroes. We're human beings. And we're also dealing with the additional challenges of changing our normal and being adaptable and having to change every few weeks, as now groups of 10 will be able to get together in Ontario. And now there's, as long as we're social distancing, it's okay. You only have to wear a mask if you're in an area where there's active COVID. If there's no active COVID, you don't have to wear a mask. There's all these different things that keep changing. This part of the presentation with prioritizing and spring cleaning is, if you're working from home and you're either caring for elderly family members or helping somebody who's disabled in your family, or you're dealing with younger children or your grandchildren, it's okay to give yourself a break and to give them a break, and not to push everybody to try to be productive the same way they were productive before we hit this ever-changing normal. It's okay to make sure if everybody's safe and healthy and fed, then everything else is a bonus. So yes, we need to still keep producing valuable work for our employers. Yes, we need to take care of our businesses, Yes, we need to take care of what the future is going to be, but it's okay to give yourself a break and to take some time. And it's okay to ignore some things for a time. The government of Canada even made it easier for us to ignore some things for a time by pushing back some deadlines about when personal income taxes were due and things like that. It's okay to put some things on the back burner and wait until later to get to them. Or it's even okay to, as the song goes, let it go. It's okay. We don't have to do everything. So one option when you're not doing everything is to outsource tasks, particularly those you don't like. There are all kinds of virtual assistants who were around before COVID-19 hit. Some of them are right here in our neighborhoods in Ontario. Some of them are on the other side of the world. There's things in your business that you need to do, that need to get done, that you don't enjoy doing. There's things in your career that you don't enjoy doing. It's okay to have somebody else do some of those things. Back when we were allowed to have cleaners in the house, I had a cleaner. And some may again someday, but I have teens now, so that'll do. But you can outsource something. I don't do my own business taxes. I don't even do my own personal taxes. I could do them, but I don't enjoy it. So why do it? I work with an accountant that lives about 20 minutes away from me, and he does all that for me. If you are in a situation where you don't have the cash flow to pay somebody else to do something that you really don't enjoy doing, or to pay somebody who can do it better, you just don't have that cash flow, then you can always look, if you're an entrepreneur, at bartering your services for somebody else's services. Maybe there's something you don't like doing. Maybe you don't like marketing and social media because you're not tech savvy and you don't want to get tech savvy. You'll use the tools you have to, but you don't want to be doing those social media bursts all the time. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands of people in Ontario, women even, lots of women who are doing social media for other businesses, who are ghostwriting blogs for businesses. There's people out there who do this for a living, and they're much more efficient than those of us who don't enjoy doing that sort of thing. So they can get it done for you. And maybe you have a service they need. Maybe there's somebody out there who's doing social media posts and creating web pages, but needs a strategic plan for how they can do that better and actually grow their business and have staff. So maybe Maite could help that company figure out how to do that, and they could help her by doing her social media. There's all sorts of opportunities there. You can connect with people. And if you're working for somebody else, you can still connect with people. You can build partnerships with your team. If you've got a team working for you, then you can make sure that the things that you really don't like to do but are necessary are done by somebody on your team who enjoys doing them and is good at it. When I last had a paid team, when I was in the military, there was a part of my job where I had to have some very detailed work done, and I really didn't like doing it. But there was a woman on my staff who thrived by getting into the details. She used to create these amazing binders with all the details so I could find things at a moment's notice. We can partner and work with people that are in our business or at our employment that can do those things we don't like to do. We can help each other. There's a couple of years ago, there was a woman who approached me who I'd known for several years. She used to teach me how to do some martial arts. And she approached me and she said, Chantal, I really need your coaching. I need your business coaching. And the reason she wanted business coaching was because she was cash strapped and she wanted to figure out how to unblock the cash flow in her company. And so she said, I want to hire you to do this. And after our first conversation, I knew she couldn't pay me. She had a cash flow problem, right? But I also knew she could continue teaching me some of these martial arts classes, and I didn't really want to pay or have a schedule. So I said, how about we do a barter? I said, I could come to any of your martial arts class and do some exercise and learn some things to help me be healthy. And I'll spend an equivalent time with you, helping you figure out how to get your cash flow unblocked. And I knew the answer right away, but as those of you who are coaches know, sometimes the client isn't willing to hear the answer. So I suggested it in our first meeting, what she could do to unblock her cash flow, and she wasn't ready. So I got a lot of martial arts training and gave her a lot of coaching and taught her some really cool tools. And finally, after about 6 or 7 hours of exchange, I said, so how about doing this, the same thing I'd suggested in our first meeting? And it was like a light bulb went off, and she was ready to hear the answer, and she made it happen. And I'm still practicing the martial arts stuff she told me. So it's win-win, you know, like you can do that. You can help each other. If you have a team, you can delegate stuff. When I retired from the military, I used to have a full-time cleaner way back. When I retired from the military, my cleaner quit. She said, you are now going to be home full-time, Chantal. I'm sure you can find time to clean. And I thought, oh, I guess I can. So I'll start cleaning my house. I don't like cleaning house. I've never liked cleaning house. I do it when I have to. Most of the time I've had a cleaner. But I thought, I'm retiring, I'm gonna have less income. Maybe I should try it myself. Well, what I quickly discovered is I still didn't like cleaning the house. So I taught my kids how to clean the house. So my 6-year-old son learned how to clean toilets, and he still does the washrooms. He's 14 now. You know, our middle child does the floors. She's a little harder to convince to do that, but she'll fold laundry. So it's like, okay, she's folding laundry. And then the eldest is good at vacuuming and emptying dishwashers and things like that. They all have tasks that they have to do, and most of the time they do it. I delegate. If it needs to be done, I'll do it. But why not delegate? I've got some very able-bodied people in my home that can help. So you can delegate at your work. You can delegate to, if you've got people in your team at your business, you can delegate to people in your family. You can delegate to your BPW sisters when you're running your BPW clubs. You don't have to do it all yourself. Another thing to remember beyond whether you outsource something or delegate something or just let it go and ignore it is it's okay to say no. And this is the really important part of spring cleaning. If you have your own business, you're going to have clients who come to you and ask you to do things. And I'm not saying anything illegal, right? It's like those people who want HR policies written. I just say no because I'm not interested. I wouldn't enjoy it. I could do it, but I'd be miserable. So why bother doing that? It's okay to say no. It's also okay if you own your own business to charge a irritation premium or a special client premium, if you want to call it that. If somebody really wants to work with you and you know it's going to be irritating and they're going to take a lot of extra hours, you can quote them a price that's twice of what you'd normally make somebody pay, because if you're going to do the work for them, then you should be compensated for the irritation that they're causing you. The really cool thing about doing that is that in some cases it scares those irritating clients away, but they're scared away not because you couldn't do the job for them, but because they don't want to pay that price. But if they do still want to pay that price, then at least you're being compensated for dealing with challenging clients. So it's okay to say no or to charge them a premium. I like the special client premium. Yeah. So just remember that it's okay. And this is the part where I say, when this spring cleaning, I'm not telling you to get rid of a loved one, you know, or to sell your house and downsize or anything like that. I'm just talking general terms in your professional lives and your careers and your businesses. Everything we don't do alone. So we need connections, we need resources, we need to connect with all the amazing resources that are out there, whether they're people or websites or whatever. There are so many different things that we can do, so many different resources. And the next bit of resources that I'm going to share with you for about 8 to 10 minutes are going to talk about a number of different things. Some resources for COVID-19, financial matters, mentorship, online and virtual communities for entrepreneurs and women's groups. Now, a lot of these are based in the Bay of Quinte region because that's where I live and work, but not all of them are. Some of them are international resources, some of them are Canadian resources, some of them are Ontario resources. So there's a bunch of different things that I'm going to share with you. And Heather has all of the actual live links to all the resources I'm going to share with you when it's a website. So she can share that by email after if you want, along with the PDF presentation. And one thing I just want to point out here, I said it before, but I'd like to say it again. If you are in a profession where there's a professional association beyond BPW, so to my mind, I have two professional associations, BPW and the Human Resources Professional Association. If there's a professional association for what you do, join it, because you will meet people, you'll network, you'll have training opportunities, you'll have opportunities to be listed as an independent contractor or consultant. Like there's so many rich resources in your professional association for whatever it is that you do. It's worthwhile investing your time. So, Human Resources Professional Association. If you're an employer, either because you own your own business or because you have staff, if you go to the HRPA COVID-19 page, they have updates that are put in there, free resources that are offered from lawyers who are practicing employment law, and links to a bunch of Government of Canada and Government of Ontario, and I believe other provinces, embedded all on a web page where there's people who are paid to make sure the resources are up to date. So instead of you or I going to search for something about how do I get the right personal protective equipment for my staff, there's links in here for all kinds of stuff, so it's useful. Of course, I had to give a plug to my other professional association too. We talked a little bit about online meeting platforms. There's Zoom that's really popular, and Zoom has really stepped up their game since this started. They used to be kind of a fun thing for people to have chatty parties with, and their security sucked. Now Zoom's security is pretty good. The Government of Canada is using Zoom in some cases. So it's really taken off, and it blew Skype out of the water. Skype sort of were caught with their pants down and just didn't react quickly like Zoom did. We're using GoToWebinar now, which is a primo source, except that we can't see everybody's faces. That's kind of a bummer. But in the GoToMeeting part, you can see everybody's faces and you can still screen share. So it's probably one of the pricier options, the GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar options for online meetings, but it's there. Adobe Connect is something that HRPA uses a lot, but it's not very user-friendly. It's there, it's secure, it's expensive, not as expensive as GoToWebinar, but it's effective. Skype, kind of like I said, Skype is almost like FaceTime now, or live chats on Facebook. It didn't catch up. And then there's a whole host of other things. There's MS Teams, there's Google Chat, there's Google Meetings. You can join a Google meeting right from your Google Mail. There's all kinds of things out there. And there's social media where you can get to learn things. And I've got a plug-in for somebody who's spoken to our BPW club here in the Trenton District area, Matt Richardson. He knows a lot of stuff about cybersecurity. So if you Google Matt Richardson and something about cybersecurity, he will be all over your feeds, and he's worth following on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. He's probably on Instagram and other things, but I don't do those ones. So I know he's on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, and you can follow and learn from him about cybersecurity issues, especially when it comes to saving people from human trafficking and creeps online. But he's also good for other things for cybersecurity. When it comes down to the financial side, the Business Development Bank of Canada actually has programs just for women. So there's all the COVID relief funding out there, and that's all good. But BDC has always had and has been more proactive about it in the last 2-3 years, about getting programs out to help women entrepreneurs figure out what it is they need to do financially to grow their business. And they feature a lot of successful entrepreneurs from all genders on their site. But BDC's got a lot of programs. They've got COVID-19 resources. They've got extra funding that's come down to help entrepreneurs during COVID-19. They've got programs for Indigenous entrepreneurs, programs specifically for women entrepreneurs. They also have a supplier diversity program that recognizes people from many underrepresented groups. So if you're from the LGBTQ community, or if you're what we call visible minority in Canada, BDC probably has a program for you to help you financially. Now, BDC normally looks big picture. Somebody who needs lots of money, or tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, is normally what they're talking about. But they do some smaller things. At the other end, and Some of you may have heard of Kiva. Kiva is an international program for microloans. Northern Ontario started a microloan program for women a few years ago, which is called PARO. And they have peer lending circles, and it's microfinancing. At the first loan you can get is $500, and then you could go to $1,000 or $2,000. And the only people who have to approve your loan are the women who are in your circle, who get to know you and get to understand your dreams and what you want for your business. So there's a lot of other things that Paro offers of that women support for each other as you're starting a business or growing your business. But they also offer microfinancing. They offer mentoring moments. They have workshops. They've got women in leadership training. So there's all these things. And when you get a microloan from them, you have to pay it out over 6 months to a year. They don't let you pay it out all at once because they're trying to teach people about cash flow. So it's really important. And I saw that, I think it's Heather wrote there that Heather attended one of Matt's sessions yesterday. He is a great presenter. That's one of the sessions I'm doing next week, is I'm his producer for a session he's offering. Okay, so Mentor City, these are the people I've got the 2-year contract with now to do training for them. I've had the privilege of being mentored by people since I was a teenager. So my parents were my first mentors. When I was at my sister's wedding, people who knew I'd recently graduated from military college, senior officers that my parents knew that were also at the wedding, they all came over and took an opportunity to give me 5 to 15 minutes of speed mentoring to give me advice for what I needed to do in my military career. And I'm not saying they're solely successful for my success. I was good at what I did. I'm still good at what I do. But they helped me overcome what could have been obstacles by giving me the roadmap to how to succeed in the military by sharing their experience. So I talked about mentorship or mentoring, and actually the Mentor City platform yesterday on the BPW leadership webcast. There is a free service that anybody can sign up for, and that's the link that Heather has that can share with you. And also maybe someday BPW International will want to work with them. I don't get a kickback for this. I'm just saying it's a really awesome and flexible program for helping organizations get their mentees and mentors to connect. I am currently mentoring a young woman in Ottawa, a young woman in Kingston, and 2 in our local area. And my most recent HRPA mentor is from Kingston. I haven't met the woman in Kingston who's my mentor yet. I've talked to her a few times on the phone. She's fabulous, but I haven't met her. I met her through Mentor City. It's a great way to get to know somebody. There's a number of different projects that the federal government is funding. So the WINCAM project at Queen's University is one, but there's probably some in your area where the federal government has provided money to help women's businesses grow. So there's, for Indigenous women, there's the Native Women's Association of Canada this year launched a program called Be the Drum. So it's for Indigenous women entrepreneurs. And there's a lot of resources that are being shared through our LinkedIn page so that people can learn how to be an entrepreneur, and specifically what you can do if you're Indigenous and you want to register your business as Indigenous. The Be the Drum crew can help you do that. Local success story that grew from the Bay of Quinte to now span a good chunk of Eastern Ontario is Hello Boss Girl. It started as it started really as a radio broadcast, and Kara Ramsey, who started it, was just talking to another colleague who was in radio. They were both profs at Loyalist College, and they said, how come we never hear any success stories of women entrepreneurs? We want to hear these stories. So they pitched to Loyalist College doing a half-hour radio show on the Loyalist College radio. And what they ended up doing is featuring a boss girl, they called them, on their radio show. And it grew so fast, and they had so many people's names given to them to do that, that what the radio show started out became a web page with 6 social media channels where boss girls from now a good chunk of Eastern Ontario are featured, and their profiles are shared, and there's all kinds of opportunities that are there. Great curated information, and a boss girl breakthrough community where it's a closed group, and they do 21 days of curated content on a specific subject, so that it gives you micro learning opportunities on a daily basis for 21 days. Then they take 5 days off, and then they start another 21 days. Before COVID, it was once a month, like 21 days of a month, and then we took a break, but now they're speeding it up. If you're looking for marketing help, Shop Boss Secrets, Dion Baker, fabulous, fabulous, fabulous marketing maven. She's just amazing. There's every community has a regional business development group. In our community, it's called Trendval. Bancroft, it's called Community Futures Development Corporation. And that might be what we heard about earlier in the Ottawa area. There's all these groups that share knowledge and learning to help entrepreneurs achieve their goals. We have something called the Small Business Center as well in our area, and most regions have some sort of small business center. Small business centers are provincially funded. The other program I was just talking about is federal. In our region, the two work in the same offices and share a lot of resources. There's a bunch of women's groups. They're listed alphabetically, so that's why BPW isn't first, because our name officially starts with a C. But there's a bunch of different women's groups, and I belong to more than one women's group. You're my professional association when it comes to women, but I also belong to the Women's Small Business Network in the Bay of Quinte area, because it's a bunch of solo entrepreneurs like me who do very many different things, and we get a chance to share ideas and share thoughts and give each other encouragement in our businesses. So a whole bunch of groups. So Beta Sigma Phi is more of a fun sorority social support organization. You all know what BPW is, so I don't have to sing our praises. A lot of women, when women first started graduating from university, found that they found their sisterhood in the Canadian Federation of University Women. There's Canadian Small Business Women. There's the Federated Women's Institute of Canada. The Women's Institute is international, just like BPW. Different focus, but similar way of working. And then the last three are regional, so I won't go into too much detail about them. Now, I love reading. I devour books. So, and sometimes I even loan them out to my friends. This list of books will be in the handout, but there are a whole host of even more amazing books that can help you reach whatever goal it is you have. I've listed these ones because I found them particularly meaningful. If you don't have time to join a mentoring program, then there's a book about being your own mentor. There's Good Morning Beautiful Business by Judy Wicks is a book about a woman who wanted to be a social activist, who ended up starting a restaurant and being an activist by doing the buy local, feed local type initiative through her restaurant. So, you know, she lived her passion through her restaurant and became even more powerful as an environmental activist. And the badass books are amazing. How to get a good relationship with money so your cash flow goes in the right direction, and encourages people how to do better. Now, I'm gonna, oh, I should go back. I'll give you your homework after. We're gonna pause now and do questions, and then I'll give you your homework, because I got so excited about the resources, I spent more time on them than I meant to. But let's pause here. We'll leave the recommended reading list up, and let's open it up if there's any questions. Oh, good. Heather has put an announcement in chat that she sent the email with the PowerPoint and the links to all the resources that I just ran through. So she sent that to you. You should get it in your email. Are there any questions before I give you your homework? I will say that the storytelling one is really important if you're thinking about changing jobs, because it helps you wow that hiring manager by telling stories that I call so what stories about why they should care about all the experiences you have. And as an entrepreneur, sometimes those so what stories are really important when you're trying to explain why people should invest in your services or products. Okay, I'm going to let you mull over any more questions. I'm going to give you your homework. I want you to invest your time and or your money in yourself and your success. So you're already members of BPW, you're already networking in our groups. Some of you are in professional associations. It's really important to have somebody to talk to help you be resilient. And sometimes the things that you talk about with BPW don't cover everything that you want to talk about. So it's okay to join more than one group to have somebody to talk to. It's important to find the training. And right now there's so much training out there that's free and available, and people who are offering coaching and counseling and fitness programs and all kinds of things. It's out there. Please pick something and invest in yourself and your success by working with those groups. And don't be afraid to outsource or delegate or let go tasks that you don't like. I mean, don't let go the ones that need to be done, like your taxes, but it's okay to let go some tasks. It's okay not to have a professionally formatted flyer for your company. It can be good enough, right? Like there's things you can let go, and give yourself permission to take care of yourself by resting and recharging, whatever that means. I have a friend who's in her 70s who goes for a 5-kilometer run to rest and recharge. That's what gives her energy. I read a book. Like, okay, she's a lot slimmer than I am, and that's okay, right? She feels recharged and healthy. I'm recharged and healthy. It all works. Be open to opportunities. When I first started doing coaching services for my company, I did it because people said to me, I want to pay you to coach me. And I was like, what? But I help people change careers all the time. I mentor them. Yeah, but no, I really want to pay you to help my family member get a new job. So I decided to add it to my business offering because people wanted it. The first time I coached another business owner was because somebody that I'd done a lot of pro bono work for contacted me and said, Chantal, we know somebody who's looking for an HR consultant. Do you know anybody? I said, yes, because I think HR consultant, writing HR policies. I said, I know this person, and this person, and there's this resource through HRPA that they can pay to have. And by the way, there's a great coach that's just down the road in Coburn. So I sent that email back, and the woman called me back and said, Chantal, do you know anybody like yourself that could do HR coaching for a local business? I said, I'm not good at hints, but yeah, if the person wants to meet me and we're a good fit, I'm happy to coach somebody in HR. Just don't ask me to write policies. So I've been working with that client for 2 years now, and I've had other clients since. I just had to be open to the opportunity. And at the end is really just face adversity, make your choices, and become even more awesome than you already are today. And if there's any questions, I think we still have a few minutes for questions. Otherwise, I turn it back over to Heather.
Pauline, you're trying to say something? It looked like she was trying to say something. I don't know. Anyhow, well, ladies, I want to thank you. First of all, thank you, Chantal. This has been very informative, and I hope everyone's been able to take something away that can help them in where they are right now and in the future. But I'd also like to thank everyone who attended. Needs to mute. It's got a button.
Hey.
That sounds like Pauline. Yeah, anyhow, it's all good. What I was going to say is, as BPW sisters, it's just so awesome to be able to learn together. And one of the things that the BPW Ontario board is looking at is trying to help provide these type of workshops to our members. I did put in the email that on July 13th, Joanne or Joe Hodgson from BPW Barrie, she's actually going to be presenting the Advance Me tool that BPW Barrie's had a lot of success with, and it's a great tool that we can use to help our members, especially if they don't realize that they have skills. And I think back, I've been a member 23 years now, and if you would have told me that I would be first vice president of BPW Ontario, I would have told you you were nuts. But when I reflect back on all the opportunities this organization's given me. I'm ready and I'm excited to work with you. So, you know, that's the type of thing. So that's what we're looking for. And then in September, there's going to be a workshop by Mary Wilton, also from BPW Barrie. She reached out and said she would like to do a presentation on homelessness and housing. I believe the tentative date right now is September 14th. So stay tuned. We're going to keep getting that information out to everyone. I'm really excited. And what else can I tell you? The conference is going to be the weekend of September 19th, just in case you haven't heard that. And the convention is October 17th, I think, isn't it? Yes, yeah. Thank you. Okay, that's exciting. So we're doing virtual, so we got to get used to it. So, and there's going to be some emails coming out, so regarding trying to help us plan our strategic plan. So I'm giving you some inside information. So hopefully in the next week or so, we want to know where our members are at, because we do care and we don't want to pry, but if you can help us make BPW strong, that's what we want. So is there anything else anyone wants to share right now before we wrap it up? We've got a few minutes if people want to talk. Man, you're so quiet. This is killing me. You're killing me, girls, because I know you're not quiet. I know you all.
Heather, it's Maide. I just
Maide.
want to thank Chantal again for a very stimulating session. Learned a lot, saw a lot. Thank you, Chantal. And thank you, Heather, for sponsoring this. And thank you, sisters. I counted that we may have representatives from 6 clubs on this call, so it's been wonderful.
Yeah, that's a great start. So please spread the word to your fellow members and sisters. And if you're interested in being a speaker or know someone, please reach out to me at, I'll just put it in the chat, BPW Heather Ellis at gmail.com. And I will reach out to her and that sort of stuff. But we'd like to continue this on, not just because it's COVID, but we'd like to continue it on because this is, I think, a great opportunity. And why not share the wealth of knowledge and expertise we have in our organization with our other members? I know years ago, Sheila, you can agree with this because you've been around a while, and Norma, we used to do workshops in Barrie, I think it was, right, Teresa, Sheila? Some professionals did them once or twice a year. And so now we can do them more often because it's virtual. So anyhow, if everyone's done, nobody wants to talk, have an awesome evening, an awesome week.
I want to say thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So good to see everybody here. I'm going to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Please take care.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
luck, everybody.
You too.
Thanks. I tried to. It's hard work. I know. Sorry, couldn't resist. Had to do it. You know it. Anyhow, awesome. All right. Take care.
All right. Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.